Hi, friends. It's Meg Collier, your internet neighbor, here to talk to you about communication practices for disruptors, communication practices for the revolution. Um, Not only in some community circles that I hang out in, but also in um, personal conversations with other folks. I've been realizing that not a lot of us have practice getting on the phone. Not a lot of us have confidence smiling and dialing, as they would say in the sales world. And it's actually one of the tools that can make us most effective in our petitioning of elected officials and making our voices heard as we actively combat fascism in our country. So with that, I wanted to kind of go over some tools that I use that could be helpful. And as I'm going through this, my hope is that I can also lend to you a little bit of information about what I know about getting on the phone and what I know about what happens somatically in our bodies as we're doing that. And so this is a telephone and we're going to talk about it. This is 5-leaf clover that I found one time. We're going to talk about how this device can be used for more than social media, for more than email, for more than text messaging, and how you can use the most powerful tool that you have outside of that, which is your voice, to connect and communicate your needs as somebody whose government works for them. This will also allow you to be a wonderful volunteer for organizations that need specific phone banking. If you're doing any fundraising, if you're looking to raise money for mutual aid, being able to talk to people and start a conversation and create a certain sense of connection is core to this practice. So let's dive right in here. First things first, if you don't know me, my name's Meg. I'm retired from the coaching industrial complex since 2023. And I basically closed my coaching practice in solidarity with the Palestinian people who have been genocided for the last 15 months in Gaza and Palestine. And now we are at the precipice of, there's no more denying what's happening in the world. There are oligarchs at the helm that are, for all intents and purposes, as I'm concerned, my pattern recognition sees this as a digital coup d'etat. When you go to the Treasury and try to shut down the payment system, when you treat the government of the so-called United States of America like it is some tech startup, it is time it's long past time to ring the alarm bells, but my hope is that new people are inspired to join and get active, right? And what qualifies me to talk all about this is that I have a degree in communications and public relations from Temple University. I have worked as a digital marketing director. I have worked as communications director. I have worked in special events. I have worked for large organizations like the NFL, sports and entertainment. I've worked for radio stations. I've worked for wholesale companies. And I've worked in staffing. And in all of my roles, one of the things that I had to do was go out and ask people questions. And, that positions you to be a great coach too, because when you care about people and you're curious, like I naturally am, you can connect with people. And those are really the two ingredients that I think are so crucial for this type of work, is a certain sense of ongoing curiosity to really understand why things work the way they do or why they're happening the way they're happening. And there's so much happening nowadays that we can't expect every single person to have all of the information on every single thing that needs our activism. So in another video, we'll talk about how to organize your activism. But I think right now the meditation that I really wanted to share was about communication, right? And was about like just like bare minimum what you can do to be communicating on this stuff. So I'm going to share my screen up here. And I'm going to tell you about this app called 5Calls. So 5calls.org is the website that you're looking at, 5calls.org. And this is an app that will allow you to easily find your representatives and then follow scripts to contact them at. So I'm in Holyoke, Massachusetts. This is the list of topics. And there's 17 topics here. I can go down the whole list if I want. And I want to decide which ones are the most important. Right now, condemning a US takeover of Gaza is really important to me. And listen, like these scripts don't have to be just used for your elected officials. They can also be used to contact institutions of higher academia. It can be used to contact organizations that are aligned with a US takeover of Gaza. So down here, you'll see these are my elected officials, and these are the telephone numbers. This is the main office in DC, and then these are local offices right here. And then down here is a script, right? And then you say, were they available, contact, or skip? What I usually do is go in here and I call each one of these people, and then I also look for something that I can call about that might be related to local stuff. And I think there's usually something, I say that like whatever, there's usually a topic in here about anti-trans legislation. And there's a tracker in here usually for tracking anti-trans legislation in your area. And so I was able to find 4 different anti-trans bills that were up for like introduced into Massachusetts legislature, and was able to contact people about that. And so like, this is a great place to start because it allows you to just dive right in, right? You're not like, where do I start? What do I say? And then, you know, we always need donations for these types of organizations that are helping us organize our activism as well. A little bit about 5Calls. Basically, they make it easy. This is the team. It's a husband and wife team. This is their editorial and social team. These are people that are helping us keep democracy alive. Why does calling work? I'm going to read what's on the screen because it's so important. Calling your representative is the best way to make your voice heard. Once your congressperson forms a public stance on an issue, it's hard for them to walk it back. The earlier they hear your opinion, the more likely it is that you'll make an impact. Calling is by far the most effective way to ensure your representative hears from you. You can also send emails. Faxes, digitized, and emails, they're just coming into a different email box. And letters and postcards, you know, they take time to arrive. So no matter what, calling is going to get you slated as supporting or against a specific policy. If you support their stance, if you don't support their stance, it doesn't matter. Each thing, it's like knowing, having them know what you believe is an important part of their public service. Remember, these elected officials work for you. This is endorsements from different legacy media, reviews of 5Calls. There's also an app for this, and you can follow them on all of the platforms that be. This stuff is so important, right? And it's really important because it's not just about your voice being heard. It's about your voice joining the cacophony of other constituents, your neighbors, the people in your geographical area that are fighting for the same things that you are. And there is literally no excuse to do something that's going to take you 15 minutes to do, especially if you're somebody that looks like me. This is a great way to show allyship without getting cookies. Okay, let's talk about how to practice. Okay, so one of the things that I coach people through doing when they're working through business development and like learning how to pitch themselves and put themselves out there is to mock through things, like to have a script. One of the creators that I follow who is big on personal internet security and cybersecurity at YK Reborn, they talk a lot about how practicing saying no and practicing withdrawing consent is really crucial when you're going through different types of surveillance, technological surveillance that require biometrics like your face or scans, things like that. And so one of the ways that you can push back against the powers that be is to say, no, thank you, or to say, this is exactly what I need, or to say, this is exactly where I stand on this topic. There's three things that I want to tell you about dialing the phone, and they relate to number one, what happens to you somatically, things that you might experience in your body. Number two, things that happen to you mentally, things you might happen to you when you get on the phone. And number three, how you can kind of scaffold yourself to develop this. And big spoiler alert, it's practice. It's practice. The first time that I started making outbound calls was doing call banks for city council call banks in high school, working for elected officials. I would do this work for extra credit in school. But it taught me really early on how important the phone was as a tool of communication. Now, I'm 40 years old, so I grew up in a straddle of cell phones were just coming out. Pagers had been out for a minute by the time I'm getting into high school. So not everybody has a phone that they're using. You literally went in and picked up a landline phone and did the dialing from this place. Now there's a lot of dialers when you're doing call banking that will have you work through your own cell phone. It wasn't like that back in the day. You had to literally go into the place and like use the phones at the bank. It's what I called it, a phone bank. And it's like through that practice, and then through the practice of being a undiagnosed hyperverbal teenager who had the privilege of having a phone line, I have just always found talking as a way for me to like verbally process. It doesn't come as naturally to a lot of people. A lot of people just can't hop on live and feel like they can talk to the internet. I've practiced for a really long time. I've practiced probably for about the last 10 years of live streaming. And so this is never weird to me to talk to an empty audience, and hope you all check out on the replay. But the first part of this is knowing what's going to happen after you hit the dial button on your phone. And so you're on the phone and you're dialing, and all of a sudden you start feeling sweat maybe, or your heart's beating really fast, and everything that you're going to say goes away. We'll talk about that in a minute. But like, there are physical reactions that we can have that might feel like anxiety or panic or nervousness. I label it as performance anxiety. It really comes on for me when I know that I am going to connect with somebody I've never talked to before. However, if I have a script, if I know exactly what I'm going to say when I get on the phone, I feel way more confident. And if I practice that script a couple times, if I read through it, if I say it out loud and pretend I'm on the phone, it can get easier. And so one of the things that I always put into practice when I get on the phone with somebody is I know who I'm calling And I know the first question I'm going to ask. And the first question I'm going to ask is like, is now a good time to talk? Can you talk now? Because I really want to respect people's time. Do you have a moment to chat with me? No? When can I call back? When could we schedule another time to talk about this thing? To me, it shows respect. To me, it says making this connection with you is important to me. And respecting that now might not be the best time, especially if I'm cold calling you. You know, when I'm calling for elected officials, it's much more straight through, right? I'm calling to leave a message. I'm calling to log my concern. I'm calling to ask a specific question. But when I'm calling to lodge a formal complaint against U-Haul for not being able to get us another truck when the ignition was hanging out of ours, like, I'm going to call and I'm going to get through to the right person. I'm going to set up a call to get on the call with the right person. And so part of this is persistence. Part of this is patience. And part of this is definitely practice, right? So somatic things, like I said, are going to happen: sweating, nervousness, and then like up into your mind, right? Racing thoughts, losing your train of thought, getting nervous and just hanging up, like the physical reaction of just being like, I can't do this. It's all very natural. Like, I want to say, like, you know, you don't get to bungee jump for the first time and feel like you know exactly what you're doing, right? Like, they just kind of walk you through it. And that's what you're going to do for yourself as you're learning to make outbound calls. So like, if you know that you're going to get nervous, if you know that your heart's going to beat, like, can you have a sensory toy around you? Can you put your hand over your heart and just acknowledge that this is a moment of difficulty, and that doing something for the first time is harder than doing something for the 5th time or the 50th time? And then understanding that your thoughts aren't facts all the time, your feelings aren't facts all the time, and that you can do hard things. You can call and collect yourself and take time. You can take time to work yourself through communication practices that are intentional, right? The dominant culture wants us to believe that there's no time for intention, that there's no time to make a phone call, that everything's on fire and we need to be in crisis mode. But the reality of the situation that we're in is that there are ways that we can go about this without acting from a place of total chaos. And it's not maybe the most revolutionary thing, but it's what we have at our fingertips from a mass scale right now. This is something, you know, calling elected officials, calling corporations, calling your local co-ops, you know, calling for bans of Israeli products. Like, these are ways that we, as people that look like me, can leverage our privilege so that we can be better co-conspirators in the day-to-day. There's nothing better that a white lady can do than write an angry email, or raise hell with a manager, or defend somebody who has asked for their support. You don't just get to pick who you defend, okay? And part of this, all of this, is like understanding that there will be a discomfort in showing up, but that like the discomfort isn't indicative that you're on the edge of your growth. The comfort is indicative that you're moving in the direction of a purpose that you envision for yourself, because you're pushing yourself beyond what is safe, what is comfortable, and what is known. And in uncertain times, it is very hard to learn new things. Our bodies do not want to integrate newness or new awareness, right? Because we're in a survival mode of sorts. And so understanding that this is going to take time, that maybe the first week of making calls is you setting up 30 minutes on your calendar to think about what it would be like to dial the phone. Look, we're allowed to think about things. We're allowed to give ourselves time. And I would say, like, giving yourself time to get in, I mean, you're already late. But that's besides the point. But giving yourself a timeline to get in the game is better than just sitting on the sidelines, as far as I'm concerned. You know, if you have to ease yourself into this stuff and you need practice, please message me. Like, we can get on the phone and you can pretend you're calling me, the elected official, or me, the corporate person. But the only way we learn is by leaning in. The only way we expand is by evolving and changing. I mean, have we learned nothing of physics? With that, I will put these links down below. I will put a little timeline in here, so if anybody wants to go back and just kind of jump through this video, you can certainly do that. My hope is to continue to do more of these and to continue to share them on my Substack. So if you did watch this through my Substack, hello, please feel free to jump on over there and subscribe if you're on YouTube, or vice versa on Substack if you want to come over and subscribe. You know, do all those fancy things that the YouTubers tell you to do. Hit a subscribe button, hit a like, drop a comment. You know, we'll just keep showing up. And this is how we move forward. You know, it's a choice every single day, one foot in front of the other. Chop wood, carry water, onwards. Bye, friends. I'll see you soon.